My husband told me he was trading up for his younger assistant as he handed me divorce papers. 3 months later, he was filing for bankruptcy because his new wife emptied all his accounts and sold his company assets to her mysterious business partner, who turned out to be me. I sit at my impressive glass desk in my corner office, the golden hour sunlight warming my face as I speak. Behind me, a wall-mounted TV silently plays a financial news channel. The ticker shows a company stock in free fall, with the name Montgomery Ventures prominently displayed in red. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Next to it is an image of Reed looking shocked, clearly caught off guard by reporters. When Reed told our friends that a man of his success deserved someone vibrant and exciting, rather than the boring accountant he'd married, he had no idea that this boring accountant had been quietly building an investment empire that would one day own his company. I pick up a framed photo from my desk, our wedding picture. I gaze at it momentarily, my expression unreadable, before setting it face down. For 15 years, I managed our household finances while Reed built his reputation as a brilliant entrepreneur. What he never knew was that I was also managing a growing investment portfolio that would eventually rival his own company's worth. On my wall hangs a magazine cover with my photo and the headline, "The Invisible Investor: How Connie Thompson Built a $200 million Empire While Her Ex-Husband Wasn't Looking." He never once looked at our tax returns. If he had, he might have. Notice that his boring accountant wife was making more shrewd investments each year than his entire executive team combined. I stand and walk to the window, the city sprawled out below me. But the greatest irony? When he left me for his 28-year-old assistant Samantha, he had no idea that she and I had met months before at an investment conference, where I recognized her unique talents that Reed had completely overlooked. I turn back, my expression conveying quiet strength and determination. This isn't a story about revenge. It's about consequences. It's about what happens when you underestimate someone because of your own prejudices and assumptions. Reed thought he was trading up. Instead, he traded away everything he'd built. Let me take you back to where it all began. To the dinner party where my husband of 15 years decided to tell our closest friends that he needed someone younger and more exciting in his life. That night changed everything, though not in the way Reed expected. The elegant dinner party, the soft jazz playing in the background. I arrange flowers on the dining table while checking my watch. The doorbell rings and I take a deep breath, smoothing my dress before moving to answer it. "Linda? Javier." "So good to see you," I greet them warmly, though there's a tension in my smile. As they step inside our luxurious home, Linda embraces me with extra warmth, whispering, "How are you holding up? We heard rumors." My smile falters for just a moment before I compose myself. "Let's just say tonight will be illuminating," I respond quietly. The doorbell rings again, and more guests arrive. Reed enters from another room, immediately commanding, "Attention!" He moves through our guests with practiced charm, accepting congratulations for his company's recent success, shaking hands, and laughing confidently. He barely acknowledges me as I efficiently manage the catering staff and ensure everyone has drinks. When our paths cross, there's a coldness in his brief glance that contrasts sharply with his warm demeanor toward the guests. I move through my own home like a ghost, performing my duties as hostess with mechanical precision, while conversations swirl around me. Reed's acquisition of SolarTech was brilliant timing. The stock jumped 20 points in a single day. He's becoming a legend in the industry. As dinner is about to be served, I catch sight of Reed checking his phone, a secretive smile playing on his lips. I pause momentarily, my expression flickering with recognition. I know exactly who's messaging him. The dining room gleams under the soft light of the crystal chandelier I selected years ago. Reed stands at the head of the table, champagne flute raised as conversation hushes. Behind him, the city skyline creates a backdrop of twinkling lights, a visual reminder of his success that he intentionally designed into our home renovation 3 years earlier. Friends, colleagues, thank you for joining us tonight. Reed begins, his voice carrying the practiced confidence of someone accustomed to boardroom presentations. As many of you know, Montgomery Ventures has had an exceptional quarter. The solar tech acquisition has exceeded projections by 30%. Approving murmurs ripple through the gathering. I take my seat at the opposite end of the table, noticing how Reed doesn't even glance in my direction during his moment of triumph. A toast, suggests Paulo Winters, Reed's CFO, raising his glass. To Reed's vision. The market doubted the solar tech move, but you saw what others missed. Reed nods, accepting the praise with practiced humility. Sometimes the most valuable assets are the ones others undervalue. As glasses clink, I catch Linda's concerned glance from across the table. We've been friends since college, long before I met Reed. Linda knows something is wrong, has known for months from the subtle shifts in my behavior. And how about you, Connie? Asks Abigail Moore, an investment banker whose husband recently left her for his yoga instructor. Reed tells us you've been busy with the Thompson Foundation Gala. It must be so rewarding doing charity work while Reed handles the stressful world of finance. The slight pause isn't lost on me. I recognize the familiar tone, the one reserved for corporate wives, whose identities are defined entirely by their husbands' achievements. The foundation work is important to me, I reply simply, my voice measured. Ensuring educational opportunities for underprivileged women in finance has always been my passion. Reed chuckles, the sound carrying an edge that makes several guests shift uncomfortably. My wife is being modest. She's the queen of spreadsheets and budgets at home, always tracking every penny, a regular accountant. I am an accountant, Reed, I correct quietly. Or I was, before we married. Of course, Reed waves dismissively. Connie did some bookkeeping work before we met, but once Montgomery Ventures took off, we agreed she should focus on maintaining our home and social calendar. She has such a talent for it. The way he says talent makes it clear he considers it a trivial skill compared to his own business acumen. Benny Howard, a newer addition to Reed's executive team, looks genuinely interested. What kind of accounting did you do, Connie? My sister is considering that field. Before I can answer, Reed interjects. Nothing too complex, Benny. Basic stuff. Connie's real gift is organizing these dinner parties. Speaking of which, he gestures to his empty plate. When is that amazing beef Wellington coming out? I've been bragging about it to everyone. The conversation shifts as servers enter with the main course. I watch Reed's deliberate redirection, a tactic I've observed countless times over 15 years of marriage. Any mention of my professional background is quickly dismissed or minimized, ensuring guests see me only as an extension of Reed's success. Midway through dinner, Reed's phone chimes with a text message. He glances at it, failing to hide the smile that creeps across his face. I don't need to see the screen to know who it's from. The same smile has been appearing with increasing frequency over the past 6 months. Important business, Reed? Javier asks, noticing the distraction. Always, Reed replies, tucking the phone away. Speaking of which, I actually have an announcement to make tonight. The table quiets. My hand stills on my wine glass, my knuckles whitening slightly. I've suspected this moment was coming, but not tonight. Not in front of everyone we know. As some of you may have guessed, there have been some changes in my life. Recently, Reed's voice takes on a rehearsed quality, as though he's practiced this speech privately. Connie and I have had 15 good years together, but people grow and change. The silence around the table deepens, growing uncomfortable as guests begin to realize what's happening. Linda shoots me a look of alarm, which I answer with the slightest shake of my head, a silent request to let this unfold. The truth is, Reed continues, not looking at me. A man in my position, at the height of his career, needs a partner who can keep pace with his lifestyle. Someone vibrant, exciting, who understands the dynamic world we operate in. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. He takes a sip of wine, seemingly oblivious to the horrified expressions around the table. Connie has been a wonderful homemaker, but let's be honest. The exciting world of finance isn't really her element. She's more comfortable with household budgets than venture capital. Paolo coughs awkwardly. Reed, perhaps this conversation— No, it's fine. Reed waves him off. Connie and I have discussed this. Haven't we, dear? I've explained that I'm simply trading up for the next phase of my life. No hard feelings. The collective intake of breath around the table is audible. I set down my fork with deliberate calmness, my face a careful mask that reveals nothing of the calculations happening behind my composed expression. Trading up, I repeat, my voice soft but clear enough to carry through the now silent dining room. An interesting choice of words for leaving. Your wife of 15 years for your 28-year-old assistant. Reed's smile falters slightly, clearly not expecting me to acknowledge the situation so directly. He recovers quickly, forcing a laugh. Always so literal, Connie. This is why you never quite fit into my business world. No imagination for the bigger picture. The awkward silence following Reed's callous remarks stretches for several long seconds. Our elegant dining room, once a showcase of our perfect life, has transformed into an uncomfortable theater for the unraveling of our marriage. I think I should check on dessert, I say finally, rising with the practiced grace I've perfected over years of hosting Reed's business dinners. As I disappear into the kitchen, conversations resume in uncomfortable, hushed tones. In the kitchen's relative privacy, I lean against the marble countertop, allowing myself a moment of genuine emotion, a brief flash of anger quickly replaced by calm determination. The catering staff busies themselves with dessert preparations, pretending not to notice my moment of vulnerability. Maria, the head of the catering team who has worked for us for years, approaches quietly. Mrs. Thompson, are you all right? I'm fine, Maria, I reply, straightening my posture. And please, call me Connie. I suspect I won't be Mrs. Thompson much longer. Maria glances toward the dining room. He's a fool, she whispers, her loyalty clearly with me. Perhaps, I agree with a slight smile. But fools can be surprisingly useful sometimes. When I return to the dining room carrying a tray of elegantly plated desserts, the conversation halts again. I move around the table, serving each guest personally, a departure from the usual service protocol that doesn't go unnoticed. As I was saying, Reed continues, once I've retaken my seat, seemingly eager to reclaim control of the narrative. Montgomery Ventures is entering an exciting expansion phase. We're preparing to take the company public next quarter. The IPO paperwork was filed last week, Paolo confirms, clearly relieved by the change of subject. Initial valuations are looking extremely promising. Which is precisely why timing is everything, Reed adds, glancing at his watch. In business, as in life, knowing when to make strategic changes is crucial. Benny, who joined Reed's executive team only 6 months earlier, looks confused. I'm sorry, but I'm not following. What changes are we discussing? Reed's smile doesn't reach his eyes. Samantha Carter will be joining Montgomery Ventures as our new director of special projects. Some of you may have met her at the industry conference last month. The mention of Samantha's name sends another wave of discomfort around the table. Javier and Linda exchange knowing glances, while Abigail's expression hardens into barely concealed disgust. Samantha has exceptional talents, Reed continues, oblivious to or simply ignoring the reactions. At 28, she brings fresh perspective and energy that will be invaluable as we enter this new chapter. Isn't Samantha your executive assistant? Abigail asks pointedly, her loyalty to me evident in her tone. Was, Reed corrects. Her new position reflects her true potential. Potential I was uniquely positioned to recognize. I take a small bite of my dessert, savoring the rich chocolate as I watch Reed's performance. Samantha certainly has talents worth recognizing. I agree, my tone neutral. When did you say she graduated from Wharton's MBA program? Reed's expression flickers with momentary confusion. I don't believe I mentioned her education. My mistake, I reply smoothly. I must have heard it elsewhere. The subtle exchange isn't lost on Linda, whose eyes narrow slightly as she studies me with new interest. As dessert concludes, Reed stands again, commanding attention. I have one more announcement that affects Connie and me personally. He reaches into his jacket pocket and removes an envelope, placing it on the table. I had hoped to discuss this privately, but since the subject has already been broached, these are divorce papers, Connie. My attorney prepared them. Everything is quite fair. The collective shock in the room is palpable. Dinner parties in our social circle occasionally feature business discussions or even heated debates about market trends, but never the public dissolution of a marriage. Reed, Paolo warns quietly, this isn't the appropriate venue. It's perfectly appropriate, Reed interrupts. Our friends should know that this transition will be smooth and amicable. Connie will be well provided for, of course. The prenup ensures she'll receive the penthouse and a generous monthly allowance. I look at the envelope without reaching for it. How thoughtful of you to remember the prenup, Reed. I recall you were quite insistent on it before our wedding. Standard. Business practice, Reed replies dismissively. Protecting assets is just common sense. Indeed it is. I agree, finally taking the envelope and slipping it into my purse without opening it. I've always admired your business instincts. The weird mix of dinner party pleasantries and marital dissolution creates an atmosphere so tense that several guests begin making excuses to leave. As the gathering breaks up far earlier than planned, I stand by the door, thanking each guest with the same composure I've shown throughout the evening. Linda lingers, clearly concerned. Call me tomorrow, she whispers as she hugs me. You shouldn't be alone after this. I'll be fine, I assure her, though I nod agreement. Some endings are also beginnings. When the last guest has departed, I return to the dining room where Reed remains seated, nursing a scotch and scrolling through his phone. Without looking up, he says, You handled that well. I appreciated your discretion. 15 years of practice, I reply, beginning to clear the table despite the catering staff's offers to handle it. The familiar action is somehow grounding amid the surreal situation. The papers are straightforward, Reed continues. Your attorney can review them, but there's nothing surprising. You keep the penthouse, your personal accounts, and receive monthly support that should more than cover your needs. I keep the company, investments and properties in Aspen and Miami. I stack plates with deliberate care. When will Samantha be moving into the Miami house? Reed's expression hardens. My personal life is no longer your concern, Connie. Of course, I acknowledge. Just as my financial future is no longer yours. Don't be dramatic, Reed scoffs. You're getting far more than most women in your position would. The prenup could have left you with much less. The prenup that specifically excluded assets acquired before our marriage and maintained separately throughout, I clarify. Exactly. Reed drains his scotch. Your household allowance account and personal spending accounts are untouched. I'm not a monster, Connie. No, I agree quietly. Just a man who believes he's trading up. The following morning, I wake at my usual time of 5:30 a.m. Reed has spent the night in the guest room, a not uncommon occurrence in recent months. I go through my familiar routine, brewing coffee and settling at the small desk in the corner of our bedroom. This space, dismissed by Reed as my hobby corner, contains a sleek laptop and a single nondescript file cabinet that Reed has never once opened. I hear Reed moving around in the guest bathroom, preparing for his day. In 30 minutes, he will leave for his 7 a.m. workout with his personal trainer, followed by breakfast at the downtown club where he networks with other executives. His predictable schedule has become increasingly convenient over the past year. I open my laptop and enter a complex password, then connect to a secure VPN. The screen that appears looks nothing like the simple household budget spreadsheets Reed assumes I manage. Instead, a sophisticated investment dashboard displays multiple portfolio performances, all showing healthy gains against market benchmarks. A notification indicates a secure message waiting from Linda Hayes, not just my longtime friend, but also my silent business partner and the managing director of Hayes Financial Group, a boutique investment firm specializing in acquiring undervalued companies. Meeting confirmed with SC at 9 a.m. Documents prepared for review. Proceed as discussed? I type a brief reply. Confirmed. Proceed with Phase 1. Will update after meeting. The sound of Reed's footsteps approaching prompts me to switch screens to a household expense tracker just as he appears in the doorway, already dressed in premium athletic wear. "I'll be late tonight," he announces without preamble. "Dinner meeting with the Morgan Stanley team about the IPO." "With Samantha?" I ask mildly, not looking up from my screen. Reed's jaw tightens. "As our director of special projects, yes, she'll be there." "Of course," I nod. "Will you be coming home afterward, or should I have Rodriguez bring your additional suits to the office?" Rodriguez is our longtime personal assistant who manages household matters, and who has been increasingly managing Reed's personal affairs as his relationship with Samantha developed. "Have him bring 2 suits and the blue tie, the Hermes one," Reed instructs. "I'll be staying at the corporate apartment for a few days. It's closer to the office during this critical period." The corporate apartment was purchased 6 months ago, ostensibly for visiting executives. I've never visited it, but I know exactly where it is, what it contains, and how often Reed uses it. "I'll let him know," I reply, making a note on my screen. "And the divorce papers? Should I have my attorney contact yours directly?" Reed seems slightly taken aback by my businesslike approach. Perhaps he expected tears, pleading, or anger. Anything but this calm efficiency. "Yes, that would be best," he recovers quickly. "The sooner we finalize things, the better for everyone involved." "I agree completely," I say, finally looking up at him with a neutral expression. A clean break is always preferable. Something in my tone makes Reed pause, studying my face for a moment as if searching for the emotional response he anticipated. Finding none, he nods curtly and checks his watch. I need to go. Marcus doesn't like to wait. He never has, I agree. Give him my regards. After Reed departs, I return to my investment dashboard. I open a folder labeled Montgomery Ventures that contains detailed analyses of the company's structure, assets, liabilities, and market position. Another subfolder contains information on Reed's personal financial situation, information that would shock him if he knew I possessed it. At precisely 8:15 a.m., my phone rings. I answer without checking the caller ID. "Are you all right?" Linda's voice carries genuine concern. "Last night was unexpected." "I'm fine," I assure her. Reed simply accelerated our timeline. "When you mentioned this possibility last month, I didn't think he'd do it so publicly," Linda replies. "That was unnecessarily cruel." Reed has always had a flair for dramatic moments he believes he controls, I observe. It's actually quite helpful. His predictability makes planning easier. "And you're sure about Samantha?" Linda asks, lowering her voice slightly though the call is secure. "The risk is significant if you've misjudged her." "I haven't," I state with quiet confidence. "She reached out to me 3 months ago, after Reed's first inappropriate advance. She was quite thorough in documenting everything." "Smart woman," Linda remarks. "And Reed has no idea you two have met?" "None whatsoever," I confirm. Men like Reed see what they expect to see. A naive young assistant flattered by his attention, a boring wife content with managing his household. The possibility that either woman might have aspirations or capabilities beyond his narrow definitions never occurs to him. The conversation pauses as I receive an email notification. The transfer came through, I inform Linda. Samantha's initial investment has been processed, $10 million placed in the acquisition fund, as agreed. That's substantial, Linda notes, sounding impressed. Where did she get that kind of capital? I thought she was just an executive assistant. Samantha Carter is her professional name, I explain. She's actually Samantha Cunningham of the Boston Cunninghams. Her family has been in private banking for generations. She took the assistant position to learn the industry from the inside without relying on family connections. And Reed never ran a background check? Linda sounds incredulous. He had HR run a standard employment verification, I reply with a hint of amusement. But she used her professional credentials, and Reed never questioned further. He saw what he wanted to see, an attractive young woman he could impress and control. His mistake, Linda concludes. Are you heading to the office now? After my meeting with Samantha, I confirm. We need to finalize the details before I speak with the Montgomery Ventures board members this afternoon. They still don't know you're the majority investor behind Hayes Financial Group, do they? Linda asks. Only Marshall and Vicky know my true role, I say, referring to two long-standing board members who have privately expressed concerns about Reed's leadership over the past year. The others will learn today once I've secured their support for the emergency board meeting. I end the call and open my closet, bypassing the conservative dresses and casual attire Reed considers appropriate for his corporate wife. Instead, I select a tailored charcoal suit I normally keep at my downtown office, the headquarters of CRT Investments, my personal firm that operates independently of both Montgomery Ventures and Hayes Financial Group. As I dress, I catch my reflection in the mirror. At 43, I look nothing like the meek, accommodating wife Reed has described to his colleagues. My expression reflects the shrewd, calculating financial mind that has quietly built a substantial investment empire, while my husband believed I was merely balancing household accounts. Trading up, I murmured to myself, a small knowing smile playing at my lips. Interesting choice of words indeed. At precisely 9 a.m., I enter the private dining room at the Westbrook Hotel, a discreet establishment favored by financial executives for sensitive meetings. The room offers both privacy and luxury, qualities that make it perfect for conversations that need to remain confidential. Samantha Carter is already seated, a portfolio open on the table before her. At 28, she possesses the polished confidence that comes from old money and elite education, though she has carefully concealed these attributes in her role as Reed's assistant. Her designer suit and minimal but expensive jewelry speak of understated wealth, a stark contrast to the more obvious styling she adopts around Reed. "Good morning, Connie," Samantha greets me, standing to offer a brief, professional embrace. "I heard about last night's dinner party. Reed's timing was unexpected." "But not entirely unwelcome," I reply, taking the seat across from her. "It simplifies certain aspects of our timeline." A server appears, and we both order coffee. Once we're alone again, Samantha slides a folder across the table. The complete documentation of Reed's financial manipulations over the past 18 months, she explains. Bank transfers, backdated contracts, altered board minutes, all of it. He's been systematically inflating Montgomery Ventures' valuation in preparation for the IPO. I review the documents, my expression revealing nothing as I process the implications. This is even more extensive than we suspected. Has he involved any other executives? Paolo knows pieces of it, but not the full scope, Samantha confirms. Benny is completely in the dark. Reed keeps him focused on technology development and away from the financials. "And you've verified the offshore accounts?" Samantha nods. 3 separate accounts in the Caymans, all ultimately controlled by Reed through shell companies. He's been siphoning development funds for at least 2 years. The board has no idea. What about his personal finances? I ask, turning to the next section of documents. That's where it gets interesting, Samantha replies, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. Reed has leveraged almost everything for this IPO. His personal guarantees are attached to over $60 million in loans that are contingent on the public offering proceeding as planned. I absorb this information with calm calculation. So if the IPO fails or is significantly delayed, he's personally exposed to catastrophic losses, Samantha confirms. Not just the company, but his individual assets as well. The Miami and Aspen properties are both collateral for the expansion loans. Properties he was so confident would remain his in the divorce, I note with subtle irony. The server returns with our coffee and departs discreetly. Samantha waits until we're alone again before continuing. There's more, she says, lowering her voice slightly. Reed has been promising certain early investors preferential stock options that directly violate SEC regulations. If this information reaches the commission before the IPO filing is complete, the entire offering would be suspended pending investigation, I finish for her. Has he documented these promises? Not officially, Samantha replies. But he sent emails from his personal account that strongly imply these arrangements. I've included copies. I sip my coffee thoughtfully. When did you first notice these discrepancies? About 7 months ago, Samantha explains. Reed asked me to help organize his personal files for the IPO preparation. He assumed I wouldn't understand what I was seeing, just an assistant handling paperwork. A common and costly assumption, I observe. What prompted you to contact me rather than going directly to the board or authorities? Samantha's expression hardens slightly. 2 things. First, I did my research on you after Reed mentioned your background in accounting. What he described as basic bookkeeping didn't align with your educational credentials or early career achievements before your marriage. And the second reason? I prompt. Reed's behavior toward women in the company, Samantha states flatly. Not just his advances toward me, which began almost immediately after I started, but his systematic devaluation of female executives and their contributions. The way he spoke about you? She pauses, seemingly unsure if she should continue. Please, I encourage. I have no illusions about my husband's opinions. He would use you as an example, Samantha explains, her distaste evident. Whenever a female employee showed ambition or requested advancement, he would reference his brilliant wife who wisely chose to focus on her natural talents rather than competing in a man's world. The message was clear: know your place. My expression remains neutral, though a fleeting hardness appears in my eyes. Reed has always been consistent in his views, if nothing else. After I discovered the financial irregularities, I considered reporting them directly, Samantha continues. But the more I learned about the company's structure and your unusual position as both Reed's wife and the silent advisor to several board members, the more I realized there might be a more comprehensive solution. And that's when you arranged our accidental meeting at the Women in Finance conference, I conclude. Yes, Samantha acknowledges, though I didn't anticipate Reed would accelerate matters by pursuing a divorce so quickly after promoting me. Men, like Reed, believe they control every situation, I note. They rarely consider that others might be several steps ahead of them. She closes the folder and returns it to me. You've taken significant personal and professional risks gathering this information. Your original proposal of a 20% stake in the post-acquisition reorganization seems more than fair. Thank you, Samantha replies. And the timeline? Given last night's developments, we move immediately, I decide. I'll meet with Marshall and Vicky this afternoon to trigger the emergency board review. With the evidence you've provided, we can suspend Reed's authority pending investigation before he realizes what's happening. And my role? Samantha asks. Continue. Exactly as planned, I instruct. Reed must believe you remain his ally. perhaps even more so now that he's publicly committed to your relationship. Your access to his communications over the next 72 hours will be crucial. Samantha nods her understanding. And afterward? Once this is done? That depends, I say, studying the younger woman with new assessment. Your skills are impressive. Your ethics somewhat flexible but guided by clear principles. CRT Investments could benefit from someone with your particular talents. I'd like that, Samantha replies with genuine interest. Working for someone who actually recognizes what I'm capable of would be a refreshing change. As we conclude our meeting, I receive a text from Linda. Board members Marshall and Vicky confirmed for 2 p.m., legal team standing by. It appears, we're on schedule, I inform Samantha as we prepare to leave separately. By this time tomorrow, Reed will understand exactly what trading up truly means. My next stop is the discreet offices of Hayes Financial Group, located on the 38th floor of the Blackwood Tower, a building that, ironically, stands directly across from Montgomery Ventures headquarters. From Linda's corner office, one can actually see into Reed's executive suite, a fact that has occasionally proven useful during our years of parallel operations. Linda Hayes greets me with the easy familiarity of our 25-year friendship. We met as undergraduates at Princeton, both studying economics against our family's expectations. While Linda pursued a visible career in finance, founding Hayes Financial Group 15 years ago, I chose a different path, one that became increasingly invisible after my marriage to Reed. The legal team is preparing the necessary filings, Linda reports, guiding me to the conference room where several associates are already working. Assuming the board meeting goes as expected, we can move on Montgomery Ventures by close of business tomorrow. And the SEC? I inquire. Our contact is standing by, Linda confirms. The moment we have formal board approval for the review, the information about Reed's irregular activities goes to the enforcement division. Their preliminary assessment suggests they'll suspend trading pending investigation. I nod, satisfied with the preparations. What about Reed's personal guarantees to Landmark Capital? Have they been notified of potential issues? Not yet, Linda replies. That's the leverage point we've been saving. Once Landmark understands the extent of Reed's misrepresentations, they'll call in their securitized loans immediately. The conference room door opens, and Abigail Moore enters. As the investment banker from the previous night's dinner party, her presence might seem surprising, but I greet her with a knowing smile. Perfect timing, Abigail. How did Reed react to your call this morning? Exactly as predicted, Abigail reports, setting her briefcase on the table. When I mentioned that Landmark Capital was my client and expressed concerns about rumors surrounding Montgomery Ventures' financials, he immediately scheduled a lunch meeting for today. He's planning to clarify any misunderstandings about the company's position. Excellent, I acknowledge. Your role is crucial here. Reed needs to believe Landmark is still supportive while we secure the board's cooperation. Abigail nods her understanding. 15 years I've watched him dismiss your intelligence while you built this operation right under his nose. I have to admit, there's a certain poetic justice to this moment. This isn't about justice, I correct mildly. It's about consequences and opportunity. Reed created this vulnerability through his own actions. We're simply positioned to capitalize on it. Linda and Abigail exchange glances, both recognizing that despite my measured tone, there is indeed an element of long-awaited reckoning in my meticulously planned strategy. The meeting with Marshall and Vicky is confirmed for 2 o'clock at Marshall's club, Linda reminds me. As the longest-serving board members, their support essentially guarantees the others will follow. I've worked with both of them for years, as an unofficial advisor, I note. But today will be the first time they learn I'm actually the controlling interest behind CRT Investments. Reed has never suspected that connection. How could he? Abigail asks. He's been so convinced of your limited capabilities that he never even investigated your pre-marriage financial holdings or what you might have built independently. A comprehensive blind spot, Linda agrees. one that's about to prove extraordinarily costly. As we review the final preparations, a secure message arrives from Samantha. Reed called emergency executive meeting for 3 p.m., suggests concerns about board loyalty, moving up timeline for offshore transfers. I forward the message to my legal team with instructions. File preliminary injunction immediately. Freeze all identified accounts pending board review. He's getting nervous, Linda observes. Abigail's conversation must have rattled him more than she realized. Good, I reply calmly. Anxious people make mistakes. We need Reed focused on external threats, not internal ones. At 1:30 p.m., I leave Hayes Financial for my meeting with the board members. As my driver navigates downtown traffic, I receive confirmation that the injunction has been filed and expedited by Judge Harmon, another Princeton connection whose career I've quietly supported over the years through strategic political donations. The Madison Club occupies a historic building that originally housed a private bank in the 1920s. Its membership remains exclusive, limited primarily to established business leaders rather than the nouveau riche entrepreneurs Reed has always aspired to join. His applications have been rejected twice, a fact that bothers him far more than he would admit. Marshall Norton and Vicky Wells, wait in a private room, both displaying the understated elegance of people comfortable with their wealth and position. At 72, Marshall has served on more boards than anyone else in the city and is renowned for his ethical standards. Vicky, in her early 60s, has broken numerous glass ceilings throughout her career and now serves as a mentor to selected promising women in finance, though few know that I've been among her protégés. Connie, Marshall greets me warmly, rising from his seat. Considering the circumstances, you look remarkably composed. Indeed, Vicky agrees, studying me with shrewd assessment. Linda mentioned there were significant developments requiring immediate attention. Thank you both for meeting on such short notice, I begin once we're seated. Before we discuss Montgomery Ventures, there's something you should know about me. Something Reed doesn't know, but that directly impacts the situation. I remove a document portfolio from my briefcase and place it on the table between them. For the past 15 years, I've operated as a private investor through CRT Investments. The initials stand for Connie Reynolds Thompson, though the connection to me personally has been carefully obscured through various legal structures. Marshall's eyebrows rise slightly. CRT Investments? The same CRT that holds approximately 18% of Montgomery Ventures through subsidiary holdings? The very same, I confirm. Vicky leans forward, reassessing me with new interest. I've reviewed proposals from CRT numerous times. The analysis was always exceptional, far superior to most firms we deal with. Thank you, I acknowledge. I've always prided myself on thorough research. Does Reed have any idea? Marshall asks, the implications clearly dawning on him. None. Whatsoever, I reply. He believes I manage household accounts and charity functions. The possibility that I might be independently building an investment portfolio never occurred to him. All these years, Vicky marvels, sitting through board meetings where he occasionally mentioned his wife's limited financial understanding, while you were actually one of our largest stakeholders. It wasn't planned initially, I explain. When we married, I maintained my separate pre-marriage investments as the prenuptial agreement allowed. As Reed became increasingly dismissive of my capabilities, I found it simpler to operate without his knowledge or interference. And now? Marshall prompts, gesturing to the portfolio I've presented. Now, Reed has created a significant liability. For Montgomery Ventures, I state, my tone shifting to one of professional concern. The documents in this portfolio detail systematic financial misrepresentations made in preparation for the IPO, misrepresentations that expose the company and its board to potential SEC violations. Marshall Norton and Vicky Wells spend the next 15 minutes reviewing the documents I've provided. Their expressions grow increasingly grave as they process the evidence of Reed's financial manipulations. This is Extensive, Marshall finally says, removing his reading glasses and pinching the bridge of his nose. If even half of these irregularities are verified, the IPO would be impossible. The company itself could face existential threats. The board would be implicated as well, Vicky notes, her legal background evident in her immediate assessment of liability. We have fiduciary responsibilities that would be difficult to defend if these practices came to light during an SEC investigation. Which is precisely why I've brought this to you first, I explain. As the longest-serving board members, you have both the influence and the clear record of corporate governance to lead an internal investigation before external authorities become involved. How did you obtain this information? Marshall asks, his tone suggesting professional curiosity rather than accusation. Multiple sources over time, I reply carefully. Some through my position as a significant stakeholder, others through individuals within the company who became concerned about Reed's activities. Samantha Carter, Vicky surmises immediately, Reed's new director of special projects. I wondered about that promotion. It seemed unusually rapid. I neither confirm nor deny the assertion, but my slight smile tells Vicky all she needs to know. What exactly are you proposing? Marshall asks, ever the pragmatist. An emergency board meeting, I state. Today, if possible, tomorrow morning at the latest. You would present evidence of potential financial improprieties and call for a temporary suspension of Reed's authority pending a full internal investigation. The other board members would need to be convinced quickly, Marshall observes. Reed has cultivated strong relationships with several of them, which is why I've prepared individual briefings for each member, I say, producing additional folders from my briefcase, tailored to their specific concerns and potential exposure. For instance, James Williamson's position as chair of the audit committee makes him particularly vulnerable to oversight failures. Vicky examines one of the briefings with professional appreciation. This is remarkably thorough. You've anticipated each member's likely objections and addressed them preemptively. I've had years to study the board dynamics, I note simply. Marshall and Vicky exchange glances, a silent communication born of their long professional relationship. After a moment, Marshall nods. I'll call the meeting for 9 a.m. tomorrow, he decides. That gives us time to speak with each member individually today. Vicky, can you handle Williamson and Rodriguez? Of course, she agrees. And I suggest we bring Hartman in early. As general counsel, he'll need additional time to process the legal implications. As we finalize the strategy for approaching the board, my phone vibrates with an incoming message from Samantha. Reed, canceled landmark meeting, called private banker instead, attempting to accelerate liquidity from personal accounts. I forward this update to Linda with instructions to monitor all identified accounts for unusual activity. There's another dimension to consider, I inform the board members. Reed's personal finances are deeply intertwined with the company's pending IPO. He's leveraged significant personal assets against loans that would become immediately due if the offering fails or is substantially delayed. Which means he has every incentive to conceal problems, Vicky concludes, and potentially move assets before any investigation begins. Precisely, I confirm. I've taken the precaution of filing for a temporary injunction freezing certain accounts where commingled funds may be held, but it's likely he has contingencies we haven't yet identified. This is moving very quickly, Marshall observes. When did you become aware of the full scope of these issues? I've had concerns for approximately 8 months, I explain. But the complete picture only emerged recently, accelerated by Reed's personal decisions. My tone remains professional, but both board members recognize the reference to Reed's affair and his abrupt announcement of divorce proceedings. Speaking of which, Vicky says carefully, how does this intersect with your personal situation? The board will need assurance that corporate governance isn't being compromised by marital discord. It's a fair question, one I've anticipated. My interest is in protecting my investment and the company's long-term viability. The personal aspects, while admittedly complex, are separate from the financial improprieties that threaten the organization. And yet the timing is difficult to ignore, Marshall notes, though his tone suggests understanding rather than criticism. The timing is unfortunate, but relevant only in that Reed's increasing personal recklessness parallels his professional conduct, I reply. Had he maintained proper corporate governance while pursuing his personal agenda, we wouldn't be having this conversation. This pragmatic assessment appears to satisfy both board members. We proceed to coordinate our approach to the remaining directors, with Marshall placing calls to schedule private meetings throughout the afternoon. As we conclude our discussion, Vicky takes a moment to speak privately with me while Marshall steps away to make arrangements. "I've known you for 15 years, she says quietly. Watched you navigate Reed's world with remarkable patience. I always suspected there was more to your story than the corporate wife facade, but even I underestimated the extent of your independent operations." "Most people see what they expect to see," I reply. "Reed expected a supportive wife with limited ambitions beyond our home. It was simply more efficient to let him believe that while I built something separately." "And now?" Vicky asks. "After tomorrow's meeting, that separate existence will become public knowledge. Are you prepared for that transition?" I consider this question carefully. For 15 years, I've operated in the shadows of Reed's assumptions. While the privacy had certain advantages, it also imposed significant limitations. I'm ready to step into the light. "Good," Vicky says with a nod of approval. "Because once this starts, there's no going back. Reed will fight, not just to save his company, but to salvage his ego. When men like him discover they've been outmaneuvered, particularly by women they've dismissed, the reaction can be volatile. I'm counting on it," I acknowledge with quiet confidence. Reed's predictability has always been his greatest vulnerability. His ego won't allow him to retreat strategically or admit error. He'll overreach, making his position progressively worse. Marshall returns, ending our private conversation. "It's arranged," he announces. "I'll meet with Douglas and Chen this afternoon. Vicky has confirmed with Williamson and Rodriguez. Hartman will join us for dinner to review the legal strategy." "Excellent," I say, gathering my materials. "Linda's team will provide any additional documentation you require. By this time tomorrow, Montgomery Ventures will be under new management." As we part ways, my phone vibrates with another message, this one from an unexpected source. It's Reed. "Need to discuss financial arrangements for divorce settlement. Dinner tonight at 8, L'Etoile." The message strikes me as oddly timed, given the accelerating crisis at his company. Has Reed somehow caught wind of the impending board action? Or is this simply an attempt to finalize our separation on his terms before the IPO proceedings intensify? Either way, the invitation presents both risk and opportunity. L'Etoile is Reed's favorite restaurant, the place where he proposed 15 years earlier. His choice of venue suggests either sentimentality or calculation. With Reed, the latter is far more likely. After a moment's consideration, I reply simply, "I'll be there." The afternoon unfolds with methodical precision as my long-laid plans accelerate into their final phase. From my private office at CRT Investments, a space Reed has never seen, I monitor the cascade of events my morning meetings have set in motion. Linda's team has successfully filed the temporary injunctions against Reed's offshore accounts. Judge Harmon has expedited the orders, citing compelling evidence of imminent asset dissipation. Marshall and Vicky are systematically meeting with each board member, building the consensus needed for tomorrow's emergency session. My secure messaging system continuously updates with developments from various fronts. From Samantha, 3:26 p.m. Reed increasingly agitated. Ordered IT to restrict access to financial servers. Told Paolo to prepare contingency statements for tomorrow. Called Aspen Realtor about accelerated listing of property. From Linda, 3:40 p.m. Landmark Capital. Received anonymous tip about Montgomery Financials. Their risk team is requesting emergency meeting with Reed tomorrow. From Abigail, 4:12 p.m. 3 major IPO underwriters have called requesting verification of Q3 projections after market rumors. Reed diverted all calls to Paolo. Each message confirms what I anticipated. Reed is feeling the pressure from multiple directions, but still hasn't identified the true source. His attempts to shore up his position are reactive and increasingly desperate, exactly as I predicted. At 4:30 p.m., I hold a secure video conference with my core team, Linda, Abigail, and Richard Dixon, my personal attorney who has quietly maintained the legal structures that keep CRT investments separate from my married identity. The board alignment is progressing better than expected, I report. Marshall has secured provisional agreement from Douglas and Chen. With Vicky bringing Williamson and Rodriguez on board, we'll have the 5 votes needed to suspend Reed pending investigation. What about the SEC filing? Richard asks. Timing will be critical there. The documentation is prepared, Linda confirms. The moment the board votes for suspension, we submit the evidence of financial improprieties to the enforcement division. Their initial review suggests they'll likely halt trading immediately and launch a formal investigation. And Samantha's position? Abigail inquires. Once this breaks, Reed will immediately suspect her involvement. She's prepared, I assure them. Her employment contract, which Reed himself approved last month, includes substantial protections for whistleblowers. Additionally, her family connections provide a level of insulation Reed can't penetrate. The Cunninghams have relationships with regulators going back generations. What about tonight's dinner? Linda asks, her concern evident. It's risky meeting him alone at this stage. I've considered this carefully. It's also an opportunity to assess how much he suspects. Reed requested the meeting to discuss divorce settlement terms, but the timing suggests other motivations. I need to determine whether he's identified any of our maneuvers. You should have security, Richard advises. We can arrange discreet presence at the restaurant. Agreed, I nod. But nothing obvious. Reed has exceptional situational awareness when his interests are threatened. As we finalize arrangements for the evening and the following day's board meeting, I open a secure file on my computer, one I've maintained for 15 years, updating it regularly as both insurance and preparation for this exact scenario. 3 say, file contains comprehensive documentation of my financial history, original investment accounts established before my marriage, every transaction made during my years building CRT investments, and most importantly, irrefutable evidence that all activities have been conducted with proper legal separation from Reed's finances, as stipulated in our prenuptial agreement. The document, labeled Contingency Protocol, includes detailed responses to every potential challenge Reed might mount, once he discovers the extent of my independent wealth and influence. I've anticipated his likely arguments, prepared counters to each, and documented supporting evidence, all maintained with the same meticulous attention to detail that has characterized my hidden business operations. At 6 p.m., I begin preparing for my dinner with Reed. I select my attire carefully, a sleek black dress that projects confidence without ostentation, accessorized with a single piece of jewelry, the diamond necklace Reed gave me on our 10th anniversary. This choice is deliberate. The necklace represents the peak of our marriage, before Reed's ambitions and infidelities had corroded whatever genuine connection we once shared. Wearing it tonight will suggest sentiment and vulnerability, psychological elements Reed would expect from a wife being discarded for a younger woman. As I fasten the necklace, I study my reflection dispassionately. At 43, I remain striking, not with the obvious youth that attracted Reed to Samantha, but with the poised elegance that comes from self-assurance. The woman in the mirror betrays nothing of the complex machinery I've set in motion, nothing of the calculated patience with which I've built my hidden empire. My phone chimes with a message from Samantha. Reed left office at 5:45. Called his broker first, then his banker. Attempted to liquidate personal investment account, but was informed of temporary hold due to administrative review. Extremely agitated. Security reported he broke a glass in his office. So the financial restraints are already taking effect. Reed will be arriving at dinner frustrated and suspicious, a volatile combination that might make him careless. At 7:30 p.m., my driver delivers me to L'Etoile. The maitre d' greets me by name. I'm known here independently of Reed, though he doesn't realize this. I've cultivated relationships with the owner and staff over years, occasionally using the restaurant for discreet business meetings when Reed was traveling. Mr. Thompson has not yet arrived, the maitre d' informs me. Would you like to be seated or wait at the bar? The table, please, I decide. Choosing to be seated first is a subtle power move, one Reed will notice immediately. As I'm led to our usual corner table, I observe the security measures Richard has arranged. 2 individuals strategically positioned at the bar, and another, seated at a nearby table. They acknowledge me with imperceptible nods as I pass. Once seated, I order a glass of Cabernet and review the final preparations for tomorrow on my secure phone. The injunctions are holding, the board members are aligning as expected, and the SEC documentation is ready for submission immediately following the emergency meeting. Everything is proceeding according to plan. At 8:10 p.m., Reed is deliberately late, another power tactic. I spot him entering the restaurant. He moves with the confident swagger that initially attracted me 15 years ago, though now I recognize it as the carefully constructed persona of a man perpetually performing success rather than actually achieving it. As he approaches, I note subtle signs of strain beneath his composed exterior. The slight tightness around his eyes, the overly rigid posture, the way his gaze darts briefly around the restaurant assessing who might be observing us. Reed is rattled, though trying, desperately not to show it. Connie, he greets me with practiced charm, leaning down to kiss my cheek perfunctorily. You look lovely. The necklace was a good choice. His comment confirms he has registered the implied sentimentality of my wearing his gift. You're late, I observe mildly as he takes his seat. Difficult day? Just the usual challenges of running. A company on the verge of an IPO, Reed replies with a dismissive wave. Nothing for you to worry about. His automatic diminishment of my capacity to understand his business world is so habitual, he probably doesn't even recognize doing it anymore. Of course, I acknowledge, taking a sip of my wine. You wanted to discuss settlement terms? Reed signals the waiter for his usual scotch, neat, before addressing my question. Yes, the settlement. My attorneys have prepared a revised proposal that I think you'll find quite generous. He reaches into his suit jacket and removes a slim document folder. I thought we were proceeding with the terms outlined in the prenuptial agreement, I remark, making no move to take the folder he slides across the table. We could, Reed concedes with what he clearly intends as magnanimity. But I've been reflecting on our 15 years together. You've been a loyal wife, Connie. You deserve more than the minimum requirements. I study him carefully, noting the uncharacteristic generosity. Reed has never voluntarily offered more than absolutely necessary in any negotiation, personal or professional. This deviation from his established pattern is the first clear warning sign that something has changed. How thoughtful, I reply neutrally. May I ask what prompted this sudden reconsideration? Reed's scotch arrives, and he takes a measured sip before answering. Let's just say recent developments have made me appreciate the value of discretion and goodwill between us. The second warning sign. Reed is seeking my cooperation for something beyond the simple dissolution of our marriage. Recent developments with Samantha, you mean? I ask, deliberately misinterpreting to gauge his reaction. A flash of irritation crosses his features before he controls it. No, nothing to do with my personal life. Rather, some complex business matters that would be tedious to explain. I see. I nod, allowing a brief silence to hang between us. People like Reed find silence uncomfortable. They inevitably fill it with information. True to form, Reed continues after a moment. The IPO preparations have encountered some regulatory complexities. Nothing serious, but timing is critical. A messy divorce could create unnecessary complications with investors. And how would these regulatory complexities affect the settlement you're proposing? I inquire, my tone suggesting mild curiosity rather than the intense interest I actually feel. Reed leans forward slightly, lowering his voice. The new terms triple your monthly allowance and add the Miami property to your settlement. In exchange, you agree to an expedited private divorce process with a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement covering all aspects of our marriage and my business affairs. The third and most significant warning sign: Reed is attempting to buy my silence, which means he believes I possess information that could damage him. The question is whether he has identified my actual role or is simply being cautious. That's certainly generous, I acknowledge, though I'm curious about the timing. Yesterday at dinner, you seemed quite committed to the original prenuptial terms. Business circumstances change rapidly, Reed replies smoothly. Part of being a successful executive is adapting quickly to new realities. And what new realities have emerged in the past 24 hours? I press gently. Reed's eyes narrow slightly. This direct question isn't what he expected from the compliant wife he thought he knew. Nothing specific, he claims, though his slightly tightened grip on his scotch glass suggests otherwise. Simply a desire to conclude personal matters efficiently during a critical business period. The waiter approaches to take our dinner orders. Reed orders without consulting the menu, the same filet mignon he always chooses. I select the sea bass, though food is the furthest thing from my mind as I assess our interaction. Reed is clearly reacting to something, but his behavior suggests he hasn't yet identified me as the source of his troubles. If he suspected my involvement in the financial inquiries beginning to surround his company, he would be displaying different signals: more direct accusation, less attempted bribery. As the waiter departs, Reed shifts the conversation. I had an interesting call from Landmark Capital today. Apparently, they've received some anonymous concerns about Montgomery Ventures' financial statements. He watches me closely as he shares this information, searching for any reaction that might confirm suspicion. I maintain my neutral expression. That sounds concerning. Were they specific about these alleged issues? Vague insinuations, Reed dismisses with practiced casualness. The kind of baseless rumors that always circulate before a major IPO. Competitors trying to undermine market confidence. And Landmark was satisfied with that explanation? I ask, knowing full well they weren't. They've requested a formal review of our Q3 projections, Reed admits reluctantly. Standard due diligence, nothing more. Paolo is preparing the materials now. The fact that Reed is sharing even this much information represents a significant departure from his usual compartmentalization of business matters. He's testing me, trying to determine if I already know about these developments or might have played some role in initiating them. I'm sure Paolo will handle it appropriately, I remark. He's always been thorough with financial documentation. Yes, very thorough, Reed agrees, a hint of something darker entering his tone. Though it's interesting how financial information sometimes finds its way to unexpected places. This oblique statement hangs between us, not quite an accusation, but definitely a probe. The financial world can be surprisingly interconnected, I observe, deliberately matching his ambiguity. Reed's phone vibrates on the table. He glances at it, his expression tightening momentarily before he silences it without responding. Problems? I inquire politely. Nothing that can't wait, Reed insists, though the tension in his jaw suggests otherwise. My own phone discreetly vibrates in my purse. I make no move to check it, maintaining my focus on Reed. Years of observation have taught me to read the subtle signs of his increasing agitation. the slight twitch at the corner of his left eye, the way he unconsciously adjusts his tie when feeling pressured, the increased frequency with which he glances around the restaurant. Something significant has just happened. Something communicated in that message he's ignored. Our appetizers arrive, providing a momentary distraction. Reed immediately launches into a practiced monologue about the restaurant's acclaimed chef and his personal friendship with the owner. Familiar territory he retreats to when seeking to re-establish control of a conversation. I allow this diversion, using the opportunity to surreptitiously check my own message, while Reed is focused on instructing the waiter about the precise temperature of his steak. The message is from Samantha. Urgent. Reed received call from Chen. Board meeting leaked. He's instructed IT to lock down all servers and revoke access credentials for senior management security review. Called private security firm to secure headquarters tomorrow morning. So Reed has been warned about the emergency board meeting. This explains his sudden generosity and attempt to secure my cooperation through an enhanced settlement. He's preparing for a corporate battle and wants to eliminate any potential complications from his personal life. What he doesn't yet realize is that the battle has already been lost before it began. As Reed continues his performance of normalcy, I evaluate my options. The original timeline has been compromised, but this development could actually accelerate our plan if managed correctly. Reed's defensive maneuvers, restricting server access and bringing in private security, could themselves be presented to the board as evidence of his increasingly erratic leadership and attempts to obstruct proper corporate governance. "You're quiet tonight," Reed observes, interrupting my calculations. "Usually you'd be asking about the foundation gala or discussing household matters." His statement contains a subtle challenge. He has noticed my deviation from expected behavioral patterns. "I suppose a divorce changes conversational dynamics," I reply with deliberate mildness. "Although I am curious about something." "Oh?" Reed raises an eyebrow, wary but trying to appear relaxed. "How is the IPO preparation affecting your personal financial arrangements?" "The prenup specified separation of assets, but I imagine the company's offering requires significant personal guarantees from you as founder and CEO. The question is precisely calibrated to probe Reed's current vulnerability without revealing my knowledge of his precarious position." Reed's expression flickers momentarily before he composes himself. "My personal finances are extremely solid," he asserts with forced confidence. "The IPO will proceed as planned, regardless of malicious attempts to undermine it." The remainder of dinner proceeds like an elaborate chess match, with Reed attempting to extract information while I carefully deflect his probes. By the time dessert arrives, creme brulee for Reed, espresso for me, we're both engaged in a sophisticated dance of implications and evasions. "The revised settlement offer requires your signature tonight," Reed states, tapping the folder that has remained untouched on the table between us. "My attorney has arranged for expedited processing first thing tomorrow morning." "That seems unusually rushed," I observe, stirring my espresso. "Most divorce settlements benefit from careful review by both parties' legal representatives." Reed's forced smile doesn't reach his eyes. "As I mentioned, timing is critical. The IPO filing has specific windows of opportunity that can't be missed. Clearing up personal matters quickly benefits us both." "Does it?" I ask, meeting his gaze. "Directly." "I'm curious, Reed. When did you first decide our marriage had reached its conclusion? Was it before or after you began your relationship with Samantha?" The question catches him off guard, not because of its content, but because of the calm, almost clinical way I pose it. The Connie he thought he knew would have avoided such direct confrontation. "That's not relevant to the settlement discussion," he replies stiffly. "Perhaps not legally," I acknowledge. "But 15 years together merits at least the honesty of a straight answer, doesn't it?" Reed sighs with practiced patience, as if explaining something to a child. "These things aren't as simple as before or after, Connie. Relationships evolve. People grow apart. Samantha and I connected professionally first, then personally. It was organic. I see, I nod. And when did you decide she would make a better director of special projects than the Harvard MBA you were considering for the position? Another flash of surprise crosses Reed's features. You know about Harrison? Michael Harrison. Yes, I recall you mentioning him several months ago. Impressive credentials, extensive experience with IPO preparations. Quite a contrast to promoting an executive assistant with no apparent background in finance. Reed's eyes narrow slightly. You've never shown this level of interest in my hiring decisions before. I've always been interested in your choices, Reed, I reply evenly. I simply express that interest differently. The waiter approaches with the check. Reed reaches for it automatically, continuing his assessment of my unexpected behavior. Something has changed in my demeanor, a subtle confidence that hadn't been present before, or perhaps had always been there but carefully concealed. As Reed signs the bill, his phone vibrates again, this time with a call rather than a message. He glances at the screen, hesitates, then excuses himself. I need to take this. Business emergency. Of course, I nod, using his absence to check my own messages. Samantha has sent another update. Reed instructed security to escort Vicki Wells from the building when she arrived asking for financial records. Marshall Norton has called emergency. Virtual board meeting for 8 a.m. instead of 9. Response to Reed's defensive actions. SEC contact alerted to potential document destruction based on IT director's whistleblower report. The situation is escalating faster than anticipated. Reed's attempts to barricade himself against the coming board action are backfiring spectacularly, creating additional evidence of obstruction that will strengthen our case. I spot Reed near the restaurant entrance, his back turned as he engages in what appears to be an intense conversation. His normally controlled posture has given way to agitated gestures, a man watching his carefully constructed world begin to unravel. I quickly send instructions to my team, accelerate timeline, prepare for immediate SEC filing following virtual board meeting, monitor all account activity overnight, enhance security protocols for all principals. When Reed returns to the table, the composed facade has cracked noticeably. His complexion has paled, and the confident swagger has diminished to tense, controlled movements. Problem with the IPO preparations? I inquire innocently. Nothing I can't handle, Reed insists, though the slight tremor in his right hand as he reaches for his water glass betrays his anxiety. Some board members are expressing unnecessary concerns about routine financial matters, typical corporate politics. That sounds challenging, I sympathize. Vicki Wells has always been particularly thorough with governance issues, hasn't she? Reed's head snaps up, his eyes suddenly sharp with suspicion. How did you know Vicki was involved? Trap has been deliberately set, and Reed has walked directly into it. I allow a slight smile to form. You just told me. For a moment, genuine confusion replaces the suspicion in Reed's expression. Then understanding dawns, followed quickly by the first real assessment he's ever made of the woman he married. He's finally seeing beyond the compliant wife persona I've cultivated so carefully. Who have you been talking to, Connie? He asks, his voice low and controlled despite the anger visibly building behind it. Over the years? Many people, I reply with deliberate ambiguity. It's amazing what one learns when others assume you understand nothing. Reed leans forward, dropping all pretense of casual conversation. Whatever you think you know about Montgomery Ventures financials is incomplete and out of context. If you've been sharing misinformation with board members, you could be legally liable for interference with corporate operations. That's an interesting perspective, I note calmly. Though I wonder if the SEC would share your interpretation of events. The color drains from Reed's face. You contacted the SEC? I haven't said that, I correct him. I'm simply pointing out that what you call routine financial matters might be viewed differently by regulatory authorities. Reed's expression hardens as he reassesses the situation. This isn't about our marriage at all, is it? This dinner? Your sudden interest in my business affairs. You're fishing for information. Actually, I already have all the information I need, I reply, my tone unchanged despite the escalating tension. I've had it for some time. For the first time in our 15-year marriage, Reed looks at me with genuine uncertainty, even fear. The woman sitting across from him is suddenly unfamiliar, a stranger wearing the face of someone he thought he knew completely. What exactly do you want? He demands, abandoning the settlement folder entirely. Nothing you can provide at this point, I answer honestly. Events have been set in motion that neither of us can stop now. Events? What are you talking about? Reed's voice rises slightly, drawing glances from nearby diners. I check my watch, a deliberate gesture designed to communicate that our conversation is concluding on my timeline, not his. It's getting late, and tomorrow will be a significant day for both of us. I should be going. I reach for my purse, but Reed's hand shoots out, grabbing my wrist with enough pressure to convey his growing desperation. You're not leaving until you explain what you've done, he insists, his voice low but intense. I look pointedly at his hand until he releases me, clearly realizing the public setting makes such displays counterproductive. I haven't done anything. Reed? I've simply watched while you constructed the circumstances of your own downfall. Financial manipulation, document falsification, inappropriate relationships with subordinates, misrepresentations to the board. I stand, gathering my wrap and purse with unhurried movements. As for the settlement offer, I'll be declining. The prenuptial terms will be more than sufficient, given what remains of your assets after tomorrow. Reed also rises, his expression cycling rapidly between confusion, anger, and growing alarm. What do you mean, what remains? Connie, if you've interfered with my company, not your company, I correct him calmly. The company you currently manage, utilizing investment capital from various sources, including, as you'll soon discover, investment funds controlled by CRT Investments. The name clearly means nothing to Reed, which confirms he has never investigated the Montgomery Ventures shareholder registry beyond surface-level reporting. Who is CRT Investments? He demands, following me as I move toward the exit. I pause, considering whether to reveal this final piece of information now or allow him to discover it during tomorrow's board meeting. A small, human part of me, the part that remembers why I married him 15 years ago, decides he deserves at least this much warning. Connie Reynolds Thompson, I explain quietly. I've been investing independently since before we met, Reed. The prenup you insisted upon protected those separate assets quite effectively, allowing me to build my own investment firm while you believed I was merely managing household accounts. Reed stands frozen near the restaurant entrance, his mind visibly struggling to process my revelation. The carefully constructed reality he has inhabited for 15 years, one where his wife was a competent but financially limited homemaker, is collapsing around him. That's impossible, he finally manages, his voice barely above a whisper. I would have known. My team would have flagged any significant stakeholder, especially one with my own last name. Your team saw what they expected to see, I explain. CRT Investments operates through a network of subsidiary holdings and investment vehicles. The connection to me personally is deliberately obscured through entirely legal corporate structures you taught me about during the early years of our marriage. Reed's expression shifts from disbelief to calculation as he mentally reviews what this might mean. Even if what you're saying is true, CRT couldn't possibly hold enough Montgomery shares to matter. I personally control over 40% of voting stock. 38%, I correct him. And CRT directly controls 18% through various holdings, with effective influence over another 20% through strategic partnerships with other investors. The blood drains from Reed's face as the implications become clear. You've been plotting a takeover of my company? For how long? Not a takeover, I clarify. a protective investment strategy, and not for nearly as long as you might think. My concerns began only when your financial manipulations threatened the company's stability and my investment. The valet approaches with my car, but Reed barely notices, his focus entirely on recalculating the power dynamics that have shifted so dramatically beneath his feet. The board meeting tomorrow, he realizes aloud. You're behind it, Marshall, and Vicky called the meeting based on evidence of financial improprieties, I reply carefully. Evidence that exists independently of any action on my part. This is about Samantha, isn't it? Reed demands, grasping for a familiar narrative that would make sense of this upheaval. Some kind of revenge for the divorce. I smile slightly. Interesting that your mind immediately goes there. No, Reed, this isn't about your relationship with Samantha. Though you might want to ask her about her family background sometime, specifically the Cunningham banking connection. Before Reed can process this additional revelation, my driver opens the car door for me. I need to go. Tomorrow will be a challenging day for you, and I suggest you prepare accordingly. You can't do this, Reed insists, the desperation in his voice becoming more evident. 15 years of marriage, and this is how you respond to a divorce? By trying to destroy everything I've built? I pause before entering the car, turning to face him one last time. I'm not destroying anything, Reed. I'm protecting my investment from your increasingly reckless management. The fact that this coincides with your decision to trade up for someone younger is merely an ironic footnote to the situation you've created. As I settle into the back seat, Reed steps forward, his expression hardening into something uglier than I've seen before. This isn't over, Connie. I built Montgomery Ventures from nothing. I won't let you or anyone else take it from me. Was never solely yours to lose, I reply calmly as the driver closes my door. Through the window, I add, and you should check your messages. I believe Landmark Capital has been trying to reach you about those personal guarantees. As my car pulls away from the curb, I watch Reed frantically reaching for his phone in the side mirror. His world is unraveling faster than he can process, exactly as I anticipated. In the privacy of the car, I finally allow myself a moment of quiet satisfaction, not vindication or triumph, but the simple acknowledgement that 15 years of careful preparation have culminated in this precise moment. Reed is finally seeing me clearly, though far too late for it to matter. My phone vibrates with a message from Linda. Internal whistleblower at Montgomery confirms Reed ordered document shredding tonight. SEC enforcement notified. Electronic. Evidence preservation order issued. They'll arrive at headquarters at 7 a.m. Things are moving even faster than planned. Reed's panic-driven attempts to conceal evidence are only strengthening the case against him. By morning, Montgomery Ventures will be under regulatory control, the IPO indefinitely suspended, and Reed's personal financial house of cards will begin its inevitable collapse. I send a brief reply. Proceeding as planned. Enhanced security protocols in effect for all team members. Virtual board meeting confirmed for 8 a.m. Next, I message Samantha. Dinner concluded. Reed now aware of CRT, connection, but not your family background. Maintain normal communication protocol. Update if he contacts you. The response comes almost immediately. Understood. He's called twice already, sent to voicemail. Security team reports he's still at restaurant, appears to be making multiple calls. Reed will be reaching out to his allies, trying to assemble support before tomorrow's board meeting. What he doesn't yet realize is how thoroughly isolated he has become through his own actions. The financial irregularities Samantha has documented are so significant that even his most loyal executives will distance themselves once the evidence is presented. As my car navigates the evening traffic toward my Riverside Drive apartment, not the penthouse I share with Reed, I switch my phone to a different secure profile. This secondary identity contains my direct communications with the regulatory authorities and legal team handling the SEC filing. The update from my regulatory Counsel confirms what I already suspected. SEC enforcement prepared for early morning action based on whistleblower testimony. Trading suspension likely by market open. Criminal referral to DOJ possible depending on document destruction evidence. This is accelerating beyond even my carefully constructed timeline. What began as a protective strategy to prevent Reed's mismanagement from destroying Montgomery Ventures' value has evolved into something more consequential. His response to the initial inquiries, attempting to conceal evidence and obstruct legitimate board oversight, has transformed financial irregularities into potential criminal violations. I hadn't anticipated or desired this outcome, but I prepared for it nevertheless. The contingency protocol document I've maintained for 15 years includes provisions for criminal proceedings, ensuring my investments and reputation remain protected, regardless of how severely Reed's actions are ultimately judged. At 10:30 p.m. As my car approaches my private residence, my secure phone registers an alert from the monitoring system at the penthouse I share with Reed. He has returned home and is accessing my private office, the space he has always dismissed as my household management center. Through the security camera I discreetly installed years earlier, I watch as Reed systematically searches through my desk drawers and filing cabinets. His movements are frantic, lacking his usual calculated precision. He's looking for evidence, connecting me to CRT investments, still not fully accepting the revelation that has shattered his perception of our marriage. Of course, he will find nothing. I've maintained absolute separation between my personal identity as Reed's wife and my professional identity as the architect of CRT investments. No physical documents in the penthouse connect these two worlds. At precisely 5:30 a.m., I wake to a series of urgent notifications on my secure phone. Overnight developments have accelerated the timeline dramatically. From SEC enforcement contact, 4:18 a.m., Judge Harrison signed emergency order freezing all Montgomery Ventures assets pending investigation. Enforcement team en route to headquarters. Order includes personal accounts of key executives. From Linda, 4:45 a.m. Landmark Capital called all personal guarantee loans associated with Reed. 3 properties now in default status. Banking partners notified of potential fraud concerns. From Samantha, 5:10 a.m. Reed arrived at office. At 4 a.m. Security reports erratic behavior. Attempts to access secure server room denied by IT director. Currently locked in office with Paolo, both refusing to communicate with staff. The situation is deteriorating faster than even I anticipated. Reed's desperate attempts to salvage his position are only compounding his legal exposure. Exactly as I predicted when I outlined his likely reactions in my contingency protocol document years earlier. I dress efficiently in a tailored navy suit, professional, armor for the day ahead, and review the final preparations for the virtual board meeting now just hours away. The presentation documenting Reed's financial manipulations has been updated overnight to include his attempts at document destruction and server access, further strengthening the case for his immediate removal. At 6:30 a.m., as my driver navigates toward the Hayes Financial Group offices where I'll participate in the virtual board meeting, breaking news alerts begin appearing across financial networks. Developing. SEC Enforcement Division raids. Montgomery Ventures headquarters. Montgomery Ventures trading. Halted pending regulatory investigation. Sources report financial irregularities at Montgomery Ventures ahead of planned IPO. The financial world is waking up to the crisis that has been building behind the scenes for months. By market open, Montgomery Ventures, the company Reed built into his personal monument, will be under regulatory control, its value plummeting as investors rush to distance themselves from the emerging scandal. My phone rings with a call from Marshall Norton. "Good morning, Marshall," I answer calmly. "Connie," his voice conveys controlled urgency. "The SEC arrived before I could reach Reed. They've secured the building and restricted access to all executives, including board members. Our virtual meeting may need to be delayed." "That won't be necessary," I assure him. The board can still convene virtually to vote on leadership changes. In fact, acting decisively now demonstrates proper governance. Response to the situation. You're right, Marshall acknowledges. I've already heard from Williamson and Rodriguez. They're especially concerned about personal liability if we don't move quickly to separate the board's actions from Reed's. A reasonable concern, I agree. Have you been in contact with Reed? Directly? Attempted twice, Marshall reports. He's not responding to calls or messages. Paolo's attorney contacted me stating his client is cooperating fully with authorities and had no knowledge of any intentional misrepresentations. The predictable abandonment has begun. Reed's closest allies are already positioning themselves as unwitting participants rather than active collaborators. By day's end, he will stand essentially alone. I arrive at Hayes Financial Group headquarters at 7:30 a.m. Linda meets me in the lobby, tablet in hand displaying real-time updates of the unfolding situation. NASDAQ has officially suspended trading. Of Montgomery shares, Linda reports as we walk toward the conference room. Reed finally emerged from his office when the SEC arrived. According to Samantha, he's currently being interviewed by enforcement officials in the main conference room. And the personal accounts? I inquire. All frozen as of 6 a.m., Linda confirms. The temporary injunctions we filed yesterday have been superseded by the SEC's broader freeze order. Reed attempted to transfer funds from his Cayman account at 3 a.m., but the transaction was blocked. We enter the secure conference room where a large screen displays the virtual waiting room for the emergency board meeting. 7 of the 9 board members are already online, their faces displaying varying degrees of shock and concern as they monitor the unfolding news coverage on secondary screens. At 7:55 a.m., Marshall Norton calls the emergency meeting to order. His opening statement is brief and direct. Given the extraordinary circumstances unfolding at Montgomery Ventures headquarters this morning, this emergency session will address immediate leadership changes necessary to protect shareholder value and ensure cooperation with regulatory authorities. One by one, the board members register their alarm at the morning's developments and their determination to act decisively. Paolo is notably absent, likely still being questioned by SEC officials. Reed's absence is acknowledged but not delayed for given the circumstances. At 8:15 a.m., after reviewing the evidence of financial irregularities, now substantially expanded, to include the overnight attempts at document destruction, the board votes unanimously to remove Reed Thompson as CEO, pending the outcome of regulatory investigations. Marshall turns to the next agenda item. We need to appoint interim leadership immediately to stabilize operations and work with authorities. I open the floor to nominations. Vicki Wells speaks first. Given the circumstances, we need someone with deep financial expertise, impeccable ethical standards, and intimate knowledge of the company's operations. I nominate Connie Thompson to serve as interim CEO. A momentary silence falls over the virtual meeting as board members process this unexpected nomination. Most have known me only as Reed's wife, occasionally present at corporate social functions but never in a professional capacity. Marshall, who was briefed on my true role yesterday, quickly provides context. For those unaware, Mrs. Thompson is the founder and principal of CRT Investments, which holds a significant stake in Montgomery Ventures through various investment vehicles. She has extensive financial experience and an insider's understanding of the company's current challenges. The revelation of my professional identity stuns the board members who hadn't been previously informed. Their expressions range from surprise to confusion to dawning realization as they process this dramatic shift in their understanding. CRT Investments? Williamson questions. The firm that's been providing some of our most insightful market analysis for the past 5 years? That's been you all along? Yes, I confirm simply. I've maintained separate professional and personal identities for various reasons. but my concern has always been protecting Montgomery Ventures' long-term value and stability. Questions erupt about potential conflicts of interest, qualifications, and the unusual circumstances. I address each methodically, my calm professionalism gradually replacing their initial skepticism with cautious support. After 20 minutes of discussion, the board votes 6-1 in favor of appointing me as interim CEO, with one abstention. I will assume control of a company in crisis, a company my husband founded, mismanaged, and now lost in a stunning reversal of fortune. As the meeting concludes, breaking news alerts continue to populate everyone's phones and tablets. Montgomery Ventures CEO Reed Thompson under investigation for securities fraud. Sources: Thompson faces potential criminal charges for document destruction. Landmark Capital calls 60 mailers in personal loans from Montgomery CEO. The financial collapse I anticipated is unfolding with the mathematical precision of a carefully calculated equation. Reed's empire isn't just being transferred, it's imploding under the weight of his own mismanagement and desperate attempts to conceal it. By noon, I've established a temporary command center in the Montgomery Ventures Executive Conference Room, the same space where Reed conducted countless meetings, showcasing his vision to investors and intimidating subordinates. Now it serves as headquarters for the crisis management team I've assembled, a mix of trusted Montgomery executives untainted by the financial improprieties and external advisors from Hayes Financial Group. The room buzzes with focused energy as teams work to assess damage, coordinate with regulators, and develop communication strategies for investors, employees, and the market. I move between groups with calm authority, asking incisive questions and making decisive calls that demonstrate my deep understanding of both the company's operations and the complex financial issues at hand. For many Montgomery employees seeing me in this role, the cognitive dissonance is profound. The woman they've previously encountered only at holiday parties and corporate galas, always in Reed's shadow, always introduced simply as my wife Connie, is now commanding their boardroom with the natural authority of someone who has been preparing for this moment for years. At 2:15 p.m., as I conclude a briefing with the legal team coordinating the company's response to SEC inquiries, my security detail approaches with a discreet message. Mr. Thompson is in the lobby, demanding to see you. Security has detained him pending your instructions. I consider my options carefully. The confrontation is inevitable, but the setting and witnesses will determine how the narrative unfolds. After a moment's deliberation, I make my decision. Have security escort him to my office, Reed's former office. Ensure the executive corridor is cleared of unnecessary personnel, but maintain standard security protocols. Record all interactions as per company policy. 10 minutes later, I sit behind what had been Reed's desk, reviewing the latest asset valuation reports that will determine Montgomery Ventures' survival options. The office remains largely as Reed left it. Modernist furniture, strategic lighting that highlights the awards and magazine covers featuring his success, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the city he had always felt he commanded. The door opens, without a knock, and Reed enters, physically brushing past the security officer who had escorted him. His appearance shocks even me, who witnessed his decline through the security feed this morning. His customary bespoke suit is rumpled, his usually meticulous hair disheveled, his expression a volatile mix of rage and disbelief. "Get out," he demands of the security officer without taking his eyes off me. "Mr. Jackson stays," I counter calmly. "Company policy requires security presence during non-standard interactions." "Company policy?" Reed's laugh holds no humor. "You're citing my company's policies to me?" "Montgomery Ventures policies," I correct him. "And yes, proper governance protocols are particularly important given the current regulatory scrutiny." Reed moves to the desk, his desk until yesterday, and places both palms flat on its surface. leaning forward in what had once been his signature intimidation posture during difficult negotiations. "Let's cut through this corporate theater, Connie. What exactly do you think you're doing?" I meet his gaze steadily. "Currently, I'm leading the crisis management response to stabilize Montgomery Ventures following serious governance failures and regulatory interventions. As interim CEO appointed by the board, that's my fiduciary responsibility." "This is insane," Reed hisses, his voice low but intense. "You engineered this entire situation. You manipulated the board, fed information to regulators, collaborated with my assistant, all while pretending to be nothing more than my supportive wife." "That's not accurate," I reply evenly. "The financial irregularities that triggered regulatory intervention were entirely your creation, Reed. The board acted appropriately once those issues came to light. As for my role, I never pretended to be anything. You simply never bothered to see beyond your own assumptions." Reed straightens, running a hand through his disheveled hair as he surveys the office that is no longer his. 15 years, Connie. 15 years you lived a double life, building some sort of shadow operation while sharing my home, my name, my life. CRT Investments was never a secret, I point out. It's been registered, fully compliant, and operating in plain sight since before we met. The fact that you never connected it to me speaks to your own blind spots, not any deception on my part. "And Samantha?" Reed demands. "Was that your manipulation too? Some elaborate honey trap to accelerate my downfall?" "Samantha made her own choices," I reply, "though I suspect she'll be disappointed you never bothered to learn anything substantive about her background. The Cunningham banking connection would have been relevant information for someone planning to trade up, as you put it." The reference to his callous phrasing from the dinner party hits its mark. Reed flinches visibly before his expression hardens again. "The SEC froze everything," he states flatly. "Personal accounts, properties, investment holdings, all inaccessible. Landmark Capital has called in loans I personally guaranteed. Do you understand what that means?" "Complete financial collapse," I acknowledge without emotion. "Asset liquidation at distressed prices, personal bankruptcy likely, potential criminal charges depending on what the document destruction investigation reveals. My clinical assessment seems to wound him more than anger would have." Reed sinks into one of the visitor chairs specifically selected to be slightly lower than his desk position, another psychological tactic in his negotiation arsenal. "Why?" he asks finally, his voice quieter now. "Was it the divorce? Samantha? What pushed you to destroy everything I built?" The question reveals just how completely Reed still misunderstands what has happened. Even now, facing the consequences of his own actions, he frames the situation as my vengeful response, rather than the natural outcome of his financial mismanagement and ethical failures. "You're still not seeing it, Reed," I observe, my tone shifting. Slightly, not unprofessional, but perhaps more personal than before. "This was never about destroying anything. It was about protecting Montgomery Ventures from your increasingly reckless leadership." I rise and move to the window, gazing briefly at the city skyline before turning back to face him. The company employs over 800 people. It manages retirement funds for thousands more. Its technologies have genuine value and potential. All of that was being jeopardized by financial manipulations designed to inflate the IPO valuation and enrich you personally. So this is you being noble? Reed scoffs, though the usual force behind his dismissiveness is absent. The selfless protector of shareholders and employees? "This is me being a responsible investor," I correct him. "Something you stopped being when you began falsifying financial projections and backdating contracts to create the illusion of growth that didn't exist." Reed's expression reveals a flicker of genuine surprise. "You know about the backdated contracts?" "I know about all of it, Reed. The offshore accounts, the diverted development funds, the preferential stock arrangements with early investors that violated SEC regulations. I've known for months." How? The single word contains both demand and disbelief. The same way I built CRT investments while you thought I was planning dinner parties, I reply. By paying attention to details others overlooked, by developing networks of information, by understanding financial structures deeply enough to recognize irregularities. I return to the desk, my movements measured and deliberate. But most importantly, by being chronically underestimated, especially by you. I consider Reed's question carefully. Despite everything, despite 15 years of dismissal and 3 months of betrayal, I owe him this much honesty. When we met, when we married, yes, it was real, I reply, my professional mask softening slightly. I admired your vision, your drive. I believed we could build something meaningful together, personally and professionally. Reed seems to absorb this, searching my face for signs of deception and finding none. What changed? He asks quietly. You did, I state simply. Or perhaps more accurately, your perception of me did. With each success, you became more convinced of your own exceptional judgment and less interested in my perspective. Eventually, it became clear you preferred a supportive wife who validated your decisions rather than a true partner who might question them. I gesture toward the chair, and Reed sits again, the confrontational energy between us shifting to something more contemplative. Do you remember the SolarTech acquisition discussion? 6 years ago? Reed frowns slightly, searching his memory. Vaguely. You had concerns about their patent portfolio, I think. I identified 3 critical patent vulnerabilities that could compromise their core technology. I correct. You dismissed it as my overthinking things and proceeded with the deal. 9 months later, Montgomery Ventures had to write down $18 million when those exact vulnerabilities were exploited by competitors. Recognition dawns in Reed's eyes, one of many instances where he disregarded my business instincts, only to discover later I had been right. After that, it simply became easier to build something separate rather than continuously fight for a voice in your company. I continue. The parallel paths weren't planned, Reed. They evolved as a response to the marriage you shaped, one where just a wife couldn't possibly understand the complexities of your business world. The security officer clears his throat discreetly. Ma'am, the SEC investigators are insistent. They've indicated they have additional documentation requiring immediate clarification. Reed nods in resignation, rising slowly. At the door, he pauses, turning back to me with a question that seems to genuinely perplex him. If you had this much financial acumen, this much capability, why hide it? Why not just build your own visible empire? I did build my own empire, I reply. The fact that you and others didn't recognize it doesn't make it any less real. As for why I operated with discretion rather than publicity, that was a strategic choice. In my experience, being underestimated provides certain advantages in the investment world. The security officer opens the door, signaling the end of our conversation. Reed straightens his shoulders in a reflexive attempt to reclaim some of his former stature. This isn't over, Connie. Actually, Reed, it is, I reply with quiet finality. Montgomery Ventures will recover from this crisis and move forward under new leadership. Your personal, legal, and financial challenges will unfold according to their own process. And our marriage, which effectively ended the moment you decided to trade up, will be dissolved according to the agreement we both signed 15 years ago. As Reed is escorted from the office, I take a moment to process the confrontation. I had anticipated anger, accusations, even threats, all of which materialized. What I hadn't fully expected was the flicker of genuine bewilderment in Reed's eyes when he finally understood how completely he had misjudged me. My reflection is interrupted by Linda's arrival. The media situation is escalating, she reports without preamble. Every financial network is leading with the Montgomery Ventures story. They're requesting statements, interviews, background, particularly about your appointment as interim CEO. What's the narrative forming? I ask. my focus immediately shifting back to crisis management. Multiple angles, Linda replies, handing me a tablet displaying various headlines. The financial press is focused on the SEC investigation and potential fraud charges. Business channels are analyzing the IPO collapse and market implications. But the human interest angle is gaining traction rapidly. CEO's underestimated wife takes control of company after his downfall. The headlines scroll across the screen, each more sensational than the last. From corporate wife to CEO, the woman behind Montgomery's new leadership. Hidden in plain sight. How Reed Thompson's wife built a financial empire while he wasn't looking. The ultimate corporate blind spot. Thompson never knew his wife was a major investor in his company. Trading up, Montgomery CEO faces ruin after divorcing. Financial genius. Wife. I scan the coverage with professional detachment. We need to redirect the narrative away from the personal aspects and toward the company's stability and future. Schedule a brief media statement for 4 p.m., just enough to address immediate concerns without creating new headlines. Already arranged, Linda confirms. But there's another dimension requiring immediate attention. Employees are struggling with the whiplash of these developments. Many are updating resumes, uncertain about the company's future. Town hall meeting, I decide immediately. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. All staff, live streamed to remote offices, transparent overview of the situation, clear commitment to stabilizing operations and preserving jobs where possible. As we work through the logistics, Abigail arrives with further updates. Samantha's resignation has been submitted, effective immediately. She's requested a meeting with you at your earliest convenience. I nod acknowledgement. Schedule it for tomorrow afternoon. And the board feedback? Mixed but trending positive, Abigail reports. The initial shock of your dual identity has given way to grudging appreciation for your financial acumen. Marshall has been particularly supportive, telling other members that your knowledge of Montgomery's operations might be the only thing that saves the company from complete dissolution. The afternoon unfolds in a blur of crisis meetings, legal, consultations, and strategic decisions. By 6 p.m., when I finally pause for a moment of reflection, the landscape has shifted dramatically from the morning's chaos. The SEC has officially announced a formal investigation into Montgomery Ventures, financial reporting, with specific focus on IPO preparation materials. Trading remains suspended, but market analysts are beginning to differentiate between Reed's personal legal exposure and the company's potential for reorganization. Most significantly, the initial employee panic has stabilized following my first on. Internal communication, a company-wide email that combined unflinching honesty about the challenges ahead with clear commitment to transparent leadership during the transition. 3 months after the dramatic collapse of Reed's empire, a new equilibrium has established itself. The office I now occupy at Montgomery Ventures headquarters has been completely redesigned. Gone are Reed's modernist trophies and self-aggrandizing magazine covers, replaced by a more functional space that prioritizes efficiency over ego. The morning sun streams through the floor-to-ceiling windows as I review the quarterly financial projections with my executive team. The company that nearly imploded under Reed's leadership is now cautiously stabilizing, though the road to full recovery remains long and challenging. The restructuring plan has exceeded initial expectations, Paolo reports. His role as CFO preserved after investigators confirmed he had been deliberately kept in the dark about Reed's more egregious manipulations. Cost reductions are at 22%, against target of 15%, and core business revenue has held steadier than projected. What about the regulatory penalties? I ask, focusing on the most significant remaining hurdle. Linda, who has transitioned from Hayes Financial to become Montgomery's Chief Strategy Officer, responds, better than expected. The SEC has acknowledged our full cooperation and the comprehensive governance changes implemented under your leadership. The proposed settlement is still substantial, but approximately 30% lower than comparable cases. I nod, satisfied with the progress. And the class action suits from investors? The settlement framework has been accepted by the plaintiff's attorneys. The newly appointed legal counsel confirms. Your decision to establish the investor restitution fund before court requirements has significantly reduced both the financial exposure and reputational damage. The meeting continues with updates on product development, client retention, and strategic repositioning, all elements of the comprehensive recovery plan I implemented within days of assuming leadership. What began as emergency crisis management has evolved into a methodical rebuilding of both the company's operations and its damaged reputation. As the team disperses to their respective responsibilities, I remain at the conference table, reflecting on the transformation of the past 90 days. The emergency appointment that was supposed to last only through the immediate crisis has been extended by unanimous board vote to a 2-year term with option for permanence. Montgomery Ventures has survived its near-death experience, though in substantially altered form. The planned IPO is indefinitely shelved. Approximately 200 positions have been eliminated through restructuring, and the company's market valuation has stabilized at roughly 60% of its pre-crisis level, a remarkable recovery given the circumstances. Vicky. Wells remains behind after the others have departed, taking the seat beside me. At 63, she has become a trusted advisor and confidant during the turbulent transition. The journal piece came out this morning, she mentions, sliding her tablet across the table. They're calling it the definitive account of the Montgomery saga. The financial newspaper has published a comprehensive investigative report titled The Invisible Investor: How Reed Thompson's Wife Built a Financial Empire in His Blind Spot. The article details my parallel career-building CRT investments while being consistently underestimated by my husband and the broader business community. I declined to be interviewed, I note, scanning the piece. They found plenty of others willing to talk, Vicky observes, including several former Montgomery executives who now claim they always knew you were the real financial genius in the relationship. I smile slightly at this revisionist history. Amazing how perception shifts when the power dynamics change. Speaking of changing dynamics, Vicky segues carefully, the final divorce settlement hearing is tomorrow, isn't it? I nod, my expression remaining neutral. Yes, though Reed's continuing legal issues have complicated matters considerably. The personal aftermath of the Montgomery collapse has unfolded in parallel with the corporate recovery. Reed's initial rage and denial gradually gave way to a more pragmatic approach as the full extent of his legal exposure became clear. The criminal investigation into document destruction and financial fraud resulted in formal charges 3 weeks after the initial SEC intervention. Reed is currently free on bail but facing a potential 5 to 7 year sentence based on similar precedent cases. His personal financial collapse has been even more dramatic than anticipated. With assets frozen, guaranteed loans called, and legal expenses mounting, he filed for personal bankruptcy protection within 6 weeks of his removal as CEO. Have you spoken with him directly? Vicky asks, her tone suggesting genuine concern rather than mere curiosity. Once, I acknowledge. His attorneys requested a meeting to discuss voluntary testimony I might provide regarding his lack of criminal intent. And did you? I told them I would testify truthfully if called. That while Reed engaged in financial manipulation, I believed his actions stemmed from hubris and recklessness rather than premeditated criminal intent. This measured response reflects my approach to the entire situation. Despite the personal betrayal that preceded the corporate collapse, I've maintained a clear distinction between Reed's failings as a husband and his culpability as a business leader. As Vicky departs, I turn my attention to the final preparations for tomorrow's divorce proceedings. The legal aspects have been dramatically simplified by Reed's financial implosion. There are essentially no significant assets left to divide beyond those already protected by the prenuptial agreement. Instead, the most challenging element has been managing the intense public interest in our separation. What might have been a private dissolution of a failed marriage has become inextricably linked with one of the most dramatic corporate downfalls in recent memory. 1 year to the day. After Reed told me he was trading up for someone younger, I sit in my office at Montgomery Ventures reviewing the company's remarkable recovery. The financial press has dubbed it the Thompson turnaround, though they mean Connie Thompson, not Reed. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I can see the city skyline that once represented Reed's conquered territory. Now it serves as a reminder of how thoroughly perspectives can change when viewed from different vantage points. On my desk sits the morning's Wall Street Journal featuring a profile titled, "Rising from the Ashes: How Connie Thompson Rebuilt What Her Ex-Husband Nearly Destroyed." The article details the company's journey from the brink of collapse to its current stable position, with share values steadily climbing back toward pre-crisis levels. Reed's story has taken a different direction. After accepting a plea agreement, he's serving a reduced 3-year sentence at a minimum security facility. His personal bankruptcy has been finalized, leaving him with essentially nothing from the empire he had spent decades building. Samantha Cunningham has published her first academic paper on corporate governance failures, using Montgomery Ventures as an anonymized case study. Her analysis of how power dynamics and gender bias create corporate blind spots has become required reading in several top business schools. As for me, the board has recently removed interim from my title, confirming me as permanent CEO following the company's first profitable quarter since the crisis. The corporate wife identity that once hid my true capabilities has been permanently discarded. The divorce was finalized without drama or contest, the prenuptial agreement functioning exactly as intended, protecting my separate assets while allowing Reed to face the consequences of his own financial decisions. A knock at my office door interrupts my reflections. Linda enters with our newest executive team member, a promising young woman who recently graduated from Wharton's MBA program with highest honors. Ms. Reynolds Thompson, the young executive, addresses me using the name I reclaimed after the divorce. The investment committee is ready for your final decision on the acquisition proposal. Thank you, Abigail, I reply, gathering my materials. And please, it's Connie. Titles tend to create unnecessary distance. As we walk toward the conference room, Linda comments quietly, "The trajectory numbers look even better than projected. The board is extremely pleased with your leadership through this transition." The company had good bones, I acknowledge. Once we cleared away the financial manipulation and realigned with core values, recovery was almost inevitable. Before entering the meeting, I pause momentarily, reflecting on the strange journey that brought me to this point. Reed's casual dismissal of my capabilities, his confident assertion that he was trading up for someone younger, inadvertently catalyzed the very circumstances that revealed my true value and his profound limitations. The irony isn't lost on me. In attempting to replace what he perceived as just a wife with a younger model, Reed accelerated his own downfall while simultaneously freeing me to step fully into my power, proving beyond any doubt that in underestimating me, he made the most costly miscalculation of his life. As I take my seat at the head of the conference table, I'm struck by how different the company feels under my leadership. Where Reed fostered competition and insecurity, I've built collaboration and transparency. Where he demanded loyalty to himself, I've redirected that commitment toward the company's mission and values. The acquisition we're discussing today represents more than just business growth. It symbolizes Montgomery Ventures' transformation from a vehicle for one man's ego into an organization guided by sustainable principles and collective purpose. When I cast my deciding vote in favor of proceeding with the acquisition, I'm not just making a business decision. I'm confirming that the company has fully emerged from Reed's shadow into its new identity, one defined not by the man who founded it, but by the values and vision that will carry it forward. The legacy of Reed's underestimation extends far beyond our personal story. It serves as a powerful reminder that capability and talent exist regardless of whether they're recognized, and that assuming limitations in others based on preconceived notions isn't just morally questionable, but potentially ruinous. As I enter the conference room, the executive team rises, a small gesture of respect that still feels unfamiliar after years of moving through these same spaces almost invisibly as Reed's wife. The transformation of the past year extends beyond corporate leadership to reshape every aspect of my professional identity. Let's begin, I say, taking my seat at the head of the table, the position Reed once occupied with such territorial confidence. The acquisition proposal under discussion represents Montgomery Ventures' first major growth initiative since the crisis, a strategic move that signals the company's transition from recovery to renewal. The deal will bring innovative technology that complements our core offerings while opening new market segments previously untapped. As the team presents their final analyses, I note how different these meetings feel under my leadership. Where Reed demanded deference and discouraged dissent, I actively seek diverse perspectives, recognizing that the best decisions emerge from robust, honest discussion rather than a single dominant voice. Following unanimous approval of the acquisition, I remain behind as the others depart. The empty conference room offers a moment of quiet reflection on the journey that brought me here. Not just the dramatic events of the past year, but the 15 years before that shaped my unusual path to leadership. My phone chimes with a message from my assistant. Ms. Reynolds Thompson, reminder of your interview with Business Leadership Quarterly at 3 p.m. They've submitted their questions in advance as requested. Scanning the interview questions, I pause at one that cuts to the heart of my story. Many have described your experience as a cautionary tale about underestimating women in business. How do you view your journey from corporate wife to CEO? It's the narrative that has captured public imagination, the satisfying reversal of the powerful man who dismissed his wife's capabilities only to watch her assume control of his company. The story has already inspired countless articles, a planned book, and even rumors of a limited series adaptation. Yet, the reality I've lived is more complex than these simplified narratives suggest. My success hasn't come from a desire for vindication or revenge, but from years of methodical work, strategic patience, and a willingness to be underestimated, when it served my purposes. As I prepare my response, I reflect on the strange symmetry of my current position. I now openly lead the company Reed founded, sit in the office he designed, and make decisions that will permanently reshape the organization he believed was his exclusive domain. Yet despite assuming this visible role, my fundamental approach remains unchanged. Careful analysis, strategic foresight, and decisions based on long-term value rather than ego or appearance. The only real difference is that these capabilities are now recognized and respected rather than dismissed or overlooked. This, perhaps, is the true legacy of the Montgomery Ventures saga. Not just the cautionary tale of Reed's hubris or the satisfying reversal of my emergence, but the reminder that talent and capability exist regardless of whether they're recognized. Reed's failure wasn't just ethical or financial, it was his profound inability to see beyond his own assumptions about where value and intelligence resided. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.